The scientific name for it is lycanthropia. It's a variety of schizophrenia.
That's all Greek to me.
Well, it is Greek.
Cinematic fantastic.
Klaatu, Barada, Nikto.
I'll show you who I am and what I am.
Bitten by a werewolf and lives, becomes a werewolf himself.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to the Cinematic Fantastic Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Weatherford.
And your other host, William Weatherford.
Get ready for opinions, dad jokes,
and bad jokes
as we watch and review sci-fi and fantasy films from the classics of yesteryear to the new favorites of today.
Deep in the evergreen canopy, where the shadows whisper secrets and nightmares lurk in the corners of your imagination, moonlit nights give birth to a curse that clings to the very soul, and the line between man and beast blurs into something far more sinister. For tonight, the Wolfman roams these cursed lands, an eerie specter stalking the foggy paths, an unwilling slave to the moon's cruel demand. The hunt is on, and the price of survival is steep. Come shelter the rain with Cinematic Fantastic. Welcome to the podcast. This is episode 36, I believe.
Yes, it is.
And today we are doing The Wolfman, which, okay, Dad, you have professed about how The Wolfman, this film, has impacted you. And to that I wonder why. Tell me how this movie has impacted you and what makes it special to you.
Well, what makes it special to me is it is a character that I think a lot of people can relate to. He's a tragic figure. He's not just, he's not just a creature that's changed into something that's never ever going to be human again, like a vampire, or he's not a constructed together, sewed together creature. Like Frankenstein's monster.
I could say the exact same thing.
He's a dual kind of character, and he's faded.
Larry is really meant to be a relatable guy. Compared to a Transylvanian Count or a mysterious, rap stranger, it's your average American Joe as our protagonist.
Literally American.
It's this dude with a deepish voice, sort of homely baby. He's got a baby face with a peewee haircut, But yeah, he is a tragic figure and someone to sympathize with. He's gone through troubles and strife, grappling with inner demons, losing control of his own identity and fighting fate.
He is a plaything of the gods in this. If you think about the Greek tragedies of old, I mean, when the gods would fate somebody and curse somebody, that it was highly dramatic. You couldn't.
If you want to get into philosophy, I had written some things up about philosophy. If you want to talk about
we'll
that.
get there. We'll get there eventually, I think. And when that comes up, you're welcome to sink your fangs into it.
Yeah, I'd love to, but let's get on to more. Let's start with how the film began. How did it get to produced?
Well, the first thing. Okay, let's start off with this. The first thing that I can say is it didn't quite start off with the screenwriter Kurt Siodmak. We're going to talk about him a good deal in this, but it didn't quite start out with him. It started out with Robert Florey. That name may seem a little familiar to you. Do you remember Robert Florey?
Yes, I believe he was on.
Yeah, some early stuff with that. But he had a story it was called The Wolfman or something similar to that. It was a little bit more than I think the Universal would have allowed because
was he the director of Dracula? Actually,
I don't remember. But was he the one that took over for Todd Browning, who couldn't perform the duties and was kind of off in his own world or whatever?
Nah.
There was some issue with Todd Browning, and I think that Robert Florey took over for him a little bit. Again, we're going back to episode.
It was another dude. It was another dude who was, the cinematographer, invented, the free camera.
Yeah. Okay. Now it's coming back to us. All right. So I don't quite remember, but I do know that the story that he originally wrote was a little bit, I think, more violent and overt. There was even a transformation that happened inside a Catholic church confessional And you know how after the Hays Code, everybody's like, oh, should we have the church, something evil happen in the church? I don't know. And so they were a little scared about that, and it kind of remained. But I don't know if it was quite the Hays Code, but the Hays Code was starting to develop. And you notice that we've already done the movie that eventually they did okay, which was Werewolf of London with Henry Hull in it. A big difference between, huge difference between Henry Hull's werewolf character and Lon Chaney Jr.'s character is even when Henry Hull is the werewolf, he still has a semblance of humanity enough to put on a coat or to like say things like, "Thank you for shooting me. The bullet saved my life," or whatever. Remember what was his last words? He actually spoke.
I know, that was crazy.
Well, he actually spoke, but Lon Chaney Jr., when he's a beast, he's animalistic, out of control. He's very instinct driven.
And he has this heavy makeup on him.
And the makeup, right. There's actually a canine nostril kind of thing going on.
Yeah, it's got to be rubber.
His face is probably one of the only times that Jack Pierce actually relented on the rubber thing. We'll talk about that in a minute. So there's a lot more makeup, yes. And in fact, some people used to call Henry Hull's werewolf the Elvis werewolf because he had those big mutton chop looking, design. You had to see it's Henry Hull's face. He's a stage actor. He wants you to see his face and go, "Oh, that's a Henry Hull guy." Plus, there's a scene in Werewolf of London where they go, where they kind of recognize Wilfred Glendon as the werewolf. Nobody could look at the Wolfman, character and go, "Oh, I saw his face up close. That's Larry Talbot." No, you can't, tell. It's so convincing and utterly different.
Speaking of things we were convinced upon, Dracula was directed by Todd Browning.
Yeah.
And Carl Freund was the dude who did more of the director's role as Todd Browning was taking it back.
That's right.
Robert Florey, I believe we saw at first in Murders of the Rue Morgue.
Yes. There you go. See, again, he's Robert Florey seems to have stuff with beasts in it. But here's the deal: is the story started really evolving, and when they gave it to Kurt, Kurt Siodmak was like a big horror science fiction writer. Even previous to that, he wrote novels and things like that. I mean, the guy likes this stuff. Now let's talk about Kurt Siodmak real quick, and we'll veer back into everything.
Yeah, I had a question about that.
About specifically what?
Which is to say, while, Werewolf of London set up a decent portion of the lore, this movie...
Silver Bullet.
Kurt Siodmak.
Silver Bullet, yeah, but...
ton of the core principles that would carry on in today's media, such as moonlit transformations, aversion to Wolfsbane, the weakness to silver. It's all here, man, even as well as how werewolves are created.
They do you mean there's a part where they... there's...
I wanted to ask
hang on. Well, I'll talk about it in a second. There's a part where I think they throw Wolfsbane, or they give Wolfsbane is nearby Bela Lugosi's character, Bela, who is a werewolf. Sorry, spoiler. And he goes, and looks away from it. I thought that they weren't quite saying that he had an aversion to it. How I translated that in the Wolfman was that it was a reminder that the Wolfbane was blooming. So it was the time when he would start doing the change a lot. So it's almost like I'm in my time now, and that's not great. That the curse is coming back. I don't think he had like an aversion to it. Maybe you saw it differently than me, but that's cool. The silver thing is in the Wolfman. It never fully mentions a silver bullet being able to do it, though.
It did one time. Remember, there was the hunting parties, and he was like, "I shot him dead on," but the other hunter was like, "Well, yeah, it's got to be a silver bullet."
That's true. But
so that is incorrect.
But what I'm saying is they don't actually make a part where they actually melt down anything to make a silver bullet until I think a further movie down the road. Same character, same Wolfman character, same lore that they're kind of carrying over. So yeah, you're right. They do mention silver bullet, but they don't actually like show it being made and like actually think of it as an actual solution until later.
Yeah, very good clarification. But I wanted to know about the pentagram thing. Where did the pentagram thing
That's all Kurt Siodmak. A lot of the stuff.
But what did Kurt Siodmak, base it off of? What was the origin?
The funny thing, his own brain. Everybody always goes, "Oh wait, the silver thing and the Wolfbane, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure that's from Transylvanian ancient lore. It's got to be from somewhere." Nope. everybody always tries to track it down, and it's all Kurt Siodmak. You've got Bram Stoker taking a lot of the lore about vampires that did actually exist in mythology and kind of piecing it together and turning it into Dracula, right? So every vampire movie that we have pretty much bases it off of Bram Stoker's Dracula and the lore kind of embedded in that. Same thing with Kurt Siodmak's The Wolfman. All the stuff about werewolves that we have in the modern movies, hundreds of these werewolf movies, it all comes from The Wolfman and what he put in there. It is actually out of his own head. The pentagram thing is something he made up.
Yes, he based it actually off of the Star of David that the Jews had to wear in the Nazi camps.
That is a theory, and there's some people that had that theory that went, oh, interestingly enough, if you see someone, let's go to Germany in the age of Hitler. If you see a person in Germany that has a star on them, it is like a mark for death. So, of course, that makes sense. When I heard about that, I went, well, duh. That makes so much sense, when you hear that. Because I always used to take it, ooh, that's cool, when I watched it a long time ago. But then when I learned more about Kurt Siodmak
So Kurt Siodmak is sort of comparing the state of being a werewolf to the Jewish culture.
Well, not just that. Not just that. But here's the other part of that is that Kurt Siodmak was saying. His autobiography is actually called Under Wolf People. That is the translation of his. It's written in German. His or whatever, Yiddish or something. I don't know. His title of his autobiography, and it means Under Wolf People. And the thought process is that Germans look like regular people, but inside they're wolves. They're beasts, and there's actually certain names for certain special forces that had the word wolf in it, Wolfenstein. Think about that, right? So there's the wolf imagery was in the Nazi party in some of the things that they did, but probably because a wolf is a very scary thing and they wanted to engender fear in people.
So this movie was very personal to Kurt Siodmak from his experience, with the Jews and the Nazis in Germany, from which he, of course, escaped. I think we talked about that. Yeah, he escaped.
I think when we did the ape, we talked about when we talked about the ape, we talked about the escape. No, never mind. No, what I was saying is that, that he escaped, I think in 32, 33, maybe. That was when Hitler's really starting to rise to power. He's like, oh, crap, got to get out of here. So that's why he's here in America, and he's a lot of times those experiences from them seeing pure evil and pure evil work not done by monsters, but by humans doing monstrous things. Also, there's a quote that I want to get from Kurt. He actually said something about, when you're a German Jew, you're on the run, right? So it seems like Lon Chaney Jr. as Lawrence Talbot is always, he's got to get out of here. I got to go. I got to, he's got to get away from people because if he's near them, it's going to cause them harm, So it's kind of like, you can start to see the imagery here. He says that, you can go out of your house and somebody hits you with a car. If you go 1 minute later, nothing could happen to you. You never know what's going to happen to us. So there's a sense of destiny and fate not being in your own control. And so the kind of the Greek tragedy thing about the fated nature of the gods, when the gods curse you and you're fated, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, and of course I'm eager to talk about a little bit of that, but again, we have to, what is the production history of the movie? He wrote the movie, and then what happened after that?
Okay, so
obviously we've got George, what's his name?
Wagner.
George Wagner, right?
Which is interesting because, and I know that you're probably thinking, oh, Kurt Siodmak probably had the appearance of the werewolf and the fur and all that in his mind when he actually, do you notice that in the movie there's quite a bit of talk about could a man become a werewolf for real? And he goes, well, in the mind, anything's possible. That's all psychological stuff, and that's actually what Kurt Siodmak's original script was full of. It was very like a psychological thriller with those elements.
Psychological horror it's definitely
good,
wasn't marketable to Universal, so they were like, you have to make him actually appear.
That's exactly right, and George Wagner had a lot to do with that. And of course, who are they going to call?
Ghostbusters.
No, they're going to call Jack Pierce. I mean, because a while back they were like, oh well, maybe we couldn't do transformations, and then they were like, okay, well, did you see Jack Pierce's work in Werewolf of London? Did you see his work in Frankenstein, The Mummy, all that? And they're like, well, of course we can do that. What Jack Pierce's makeup did, though, it was very good for its time, but I think, and it's very tedious and very cool, but I think later on it wasn't feasible, and I'll tell you why. Is in this transformation, which you actually only see one transformation, I believe, in the Wolfman movie. People seem to think there's a transformation in it of the face, and there isn't. You see hands, maybe, or feet.
You see the face regress later in the movie.
Yes, when he quote dies.
Because they can't have sequels if somebody dies, right? So consider it not a spoiler if you know it has a sequel. Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. The Frankenstein meets the Wolfman would entirely be just him staring at a corpse and go, "I met the Wolfman."
Right, exactly. I met him. There he is. Yeah, he's a dead body. No, it's true, and honestly, we will talk about this when we get to those movies. But how they explain how he comes back is, you just got to go with it. Okay, so back to this.
I would assume this would have starred Boris Karloff.
Yes, actually,
but couldn't.
Yes, actually, early on they did choose to do Boris Karloff, but he was actually otherwise occupied when they wanted to do it. I think at that time when they wanted to do it was The Mummy, is when they were going to do The Mummy, actually. So, and it kind of sat, undone for quite a while. I think Bela Lugosi was interested in doing it as well.
And then when Kurt Sudmak is pretty good in Son of Frankenstein, let's go pull him up here.
Yeah, well, you mean Lon Chaney?
Kurt Sudmak.
Lon Chaney Jr. No, yes, in the writing. Yes, of course, in the writing. Yeah.
But what about Lon Chaney Jr.?
Okay. Of course, he's the son of Lon Chaney. His name is Creighton. Creighton is his birth name. When he was born stillborn. So if you want like a horrific beginning, Lon Chaney Jr. had a horrific beginning. When he was born, he said he had no blood flow to his body, so his body was like almost black, he's dead. His father took him from the mother, ran out to the icy lake behind their house, and busted open the ice and put him down and dunked him multiple times in the lake until he popped alive. Go figure.
So I think maybe Lon Chaney Sr. had a little bit of trouble with his children in his life.
Well, yeah. Well, I'll tell you, there was an element of trouble that came about. Now they loved each other. He was a good. Lon Chaney was a good dad. One of the reasons we talked about this earlier about Lon Chaney, but one reason why Lon Chaney is so good with silent movies and so good with expression and all that was his parents were deaf. And he wasn't deaf, but he would communicate with his father and mother with his face, with with hand signs, all that. It really caused him to understand people that don't have a voice or that aren't looked upon as normal. Let's just put it that way. And deaf people are just as normal as us. They're just different, have a different experience and challenge. And he knew that subconsciously. That's why he was always drawn to characters that were different, either through their appearance or maybe they had issues where they couldn't walk or handicapped or something like that. He was always into that kind of thing, and it shows. So I think that a lot of that rubbed off on his son. But the thing is, though, if you got a famous father, you kind of try to avoid, even the name of the father. So he went with his name Creighton for the longest time until he kind of was like pushed into it. And go, okay, fine, I'll do it.
Because he had a legacy to live up to his father.
He didn't think of it like that.
What he did is simulate that. I think Of Mice and Men was his first film.
That was the first real critical acclaim.
I think it was that like really eager, like, I don't know, country bumpkin dude.
Oh no, well, they're both country guys. It's a country story, and they're traveling, and they're traveling and doing odd jobs here and there. The character of Lenny is a very hulking, big kind of character that fit Lon Chaney Jr. perfectly.
Yeah, Lon Chaney Jr. is huge, as you will see in this movie, compared to his father, who is
And that
played by the Invisible
Oh,
Man.
you mean that aspect? Yeah, actually, Kurt Siodmak thought it was kind. He didn't probably say this out loud because he didn't want to mess up. But later on in his life, there's interviews with him where he goes, "It was very ridiculous because if you look at the father, he's much shorter than this." Even when we watched this,
Compare Claude Rains to Lon Chaney Jr. Lon Chaney Jr.
He's so short.
Is much bigger.
Yeah. Well, I was joking that maybe he got the height from his mother. His mother was like 8 foot tall or something. I don't know. In the story of the Wolfman,
I mean, he was on the shoulders of a giant, literally.
Right. Well, as a quick side note, that is one interesting way in which he was able to portray another large character, and that he actually portrayed Frankenstein's monster in Ghost of Frankenstein, which we're going to watch for the podcast. And actually, as an interesting bit of trivia, that means that Lon Chaney Jr. is one of the only ones, number one, to play the same character across all 5 movies, which is the Wolfman. And also, he played just about all the monsters.
Yeah, he played like every single monster. He was fairly versatile.
He's played Dracula. He's played in Son of Dracula, which we'll talk about why it's called Son of. Let's see. He played Dracula. He played Frankenstein's monster. He played the Mummy, and he played the Wolfman. The only ones he hadn't played was an Invisible Man. An Invisible Man he hasn't played, I don't think.
He's hulky enough to be monstrous like, Frankenstein or the Wolfman, but he's also got this human element that would be perfect for like a Dracula because, he's got this defined... Boris Karloff has this defined jawline.
He has sad puppy dog eyes when he gets really, dealing with stuff. Now, okay, what convinced them that Lon Chaney Jr. could be this kind of a horror figure, though, was a movie that you're going to think is kind of strange why we did this, but it's called Man-Made Monster, and it actually came out before the Wolfman did.
But yeah, we have a really weird plan for Man-Made Monster.
Yeah, why aren't we
just gonna have to wait and see till like next season?
We're gonna make it a double feature with a movie I think called Indestructible Man or something. It's just they're very similar movies in terms of these abilities that he has, and so
we've done a weird organization.
We do weird stuff sometimes.
We do weird stuff sometimes. Just continue check out our podcast when we want to. But what's the next thing?
Well, okay, so after playing the Wolfman, he said, "I've been fighting my destiny for long enough. I'm just going to accept my destiny." As Lon Chaney Jr. That in fact, in the credits of the Wolfman, it says Lon Chaney, right? But he accepted Lon Chaney Jr. as the name he went by when he did movies. He accepted that.
What about the makeup?
Okay, I want to go into makeup real quick. That's Jack Pierce. It used yak hair. It used the cotton collodion kind of style. Jack Pierce was famously against rubber appliances, but he kind of went, okay, and he used another guy to make the rubber nose part because it looked better than what he had originally thought. So he kind of relented a little bit, but not with the rest of it. But the thing is, though, it took a long time to put on, especially...
Yeah, it took like 4 hours to put on.
Yeah, well, there's a technique that they did the dissolves with. It's called a lap dissolve. You had to keep still so much. They even had like a piece of glass as part of the camera that they could slide in that they drew on so they could, when Lon Chaney Jr. would go off to go eat or smoke or chill out, that he could come back and lay in the same position. It was very time intensive.
Yeah, I heard that Jack Pierce burned the hair onto the Wolfman.
He didn't burn the hair. What he did is you take the yak hair and you singe it with a curling iron, and it gives it that natural kind of beastly look to it. So he didn't do it.
Apparently it was to burn him on purpose or something. I don't
know
if that's
about that.
true.
No, that's not true. I think people were kind of pushing things up. But one thing that people weren't kind of making big of was Jack Pierce and Lon Chaney Jr. didn't like one another. I think probably because the makeup was so painstaking and laborious that it just made them kind of go, dude, I'm gonna. There's even a production photo of Lon Chaney Jr. kind of holding a fist up like I'm gonna punch you to Jack Pierce, and maybe it was a little bit staged. I don't know, but that's the rumor that he didn't have a good relationship with Jack Pierce. Not like Boris Karloff did. Boris Karloff and Jack were but the thing is, you got to realize once Boris got his Frankenstein monster makeup on, it was on for quite a while. With this was a transformational makeup, so it had to go on bit by bit, and it's just hard to deal with. The feet, I think, were uncomfortable to walk around in. But hey, Lon Chaney Jr., he's a trooper. He's going to make it work. There's an old story about that. It's not really a big secret that Lon Chaney Jr. was a drinker, but he would confine it mainly to like afternoons and evenings. So they knew that they had to get most of their good film of Lon in the morning and midday. And then they like, okay, let's avoid the afternoons. And there's a couple times when his drinking was a problem, and we'll explain why in a little bit.
Now, I heard as well that Lon Chaney would, scare Evelyn
That's
Ankers.
Right. Let's talk
stage.
about Evelyn Ankers real quick.
Yeah, do they often pair together? Evelyn Ankers and Lon Chaney Jr.
They will.
Oh, if so, what movies?
I'm gonna scroll. I'm gonna pull up some notes in just a minute about movies that she does going forward. One thing about Evelyn Ankers is she would do like little bit parts in different things, and they're fine and everything. But I'm telling you, as soon as she started doing these movies for Universal, she became the queen of the B movies. She was in so many of them for quite a while until she I think she turned 30, 32. And she was married at the time. So she basically retired from acting. A lot of actresses, remember we've talked about some other actresses who just straight up retired from acting and became a housewife, and she perfectly fine with that. And their husband would either was an actor or their husband was a director and would do stuff, and then she would, so they were fine with wanting to do that. That was kind of a traditional kind of thing. Women wouldn't choose to be an actress for their entire life like a lot of other ladies would later. I think that was the changing of society that did that. Anyway, Evelyn Ankers, here's a story of Evelyn Ankers and Lon Chaney Jr. and how they didn't quite get along privately. Here's what happened. I think Lon Chaney Jr. got drunk and he defaced some property, and he got punished in the way you only can punish an actor, and that's giving them a different dressing room. And I don't know if this is entirely true. This is just apocryphal, right? It's anecdotal. I don't know what you're going to call that. But supposedly she got his dressing room, which was bigger, and he was like, and I got hers, and I'm the top bill, so he was kind of like but then he would scare her wearing the makeup. He also had goofy nicknames for her. I don't know any of those nicknames, but I don't know. They didn't really say what those nicknames were, but they kind of had a little bit, but they worked together fine. As far as things that she's going to do later, let's see.
I believe she was really great in Son of Dracula.
Oh, yeah, okay. So she is in The Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr. and Bela Lugosi. She plays Gwen Conliffe. She's also in The Ghost of Frankenstein, again with Lon Chaney Jr. and Bela Lugosi as Igor, again. She plays Elsa Frankenstein, which is, I guess, a wife of another, Frankenstein.
Which is, again, hilarious because Mary Shelley was played by Elsa Lancaster.
That's why they do that, yeah. So, and Son of Dracula with Lon Chaney Jr., she plays Claire Caldwell in that. That's in 43. We'll do that later. She's also in The Invisible Man's Revenge with John Carradine. That's in 44.
Did Bella and Lon Chaney, have a rival over getting the Wolfman role?
No,
really?
They didn't. I think.
I mean, they will have, a rival in, the Frankenstein versus the Wolfman, but
they worked together a couple times, like they did.
But I think like Bella sort of wanted to be the Wolfman, but was not really.
But he's fine.
He wasn't picked.
Yeah, and he probably understands why, because the way they wanted to go with it, originally there wasn't the Sir John Talbot role. Was not actually Lon Chaney. Lon Chaney's character, Lawrence Talbot, wasn't his father. He was a different guy with a different name completely. He just was a guy from America, an engineer who came over to Talbot Castle to fix their telescope. He wasn't related.
So he wasn't related to Sir John.
Yeah, he wasn't a aristocrat. In blood, but just that lived in America. He was just straight up American. He was just an average Joe. That's kind of Kurt Siodmak was like, I didn't want to do that, but they kind of forced my hand. So some of those changes to his core script were, of course, Universal wanting to monkey with it a little bit, so to speak.
So what of the shooting?
Okay, well, the shooting, I think, was very fast. I think they filmed all in 1 month, and then the movie came out 2 weeks after that, so the editing must have just been really fast.
After all, they did. We will talk about how they saved a lot of different, lots of time on the Wolfman shots. I'll say that.
Yeah. That's true. And you'll notice. Okay, let's talk about the setting. I know it's supposed to be, you say Talbot, and you got some people that speak British, and Gwen Conliffe is Welsh, and there's different, like, there's Moors. So you're thinking, okay, maybe it's somewhere in England, like
I believe it is in Wales.
Yeah, but there's elements that do look quite a bit like the German towns of like in Frankenstein. There's also elements. You've got Romani, gypsies is really the old term, but
Actually, yeah, that's a really good word for referring to them. Actually,
Romani is Romanian. Is actually Roma or Romani is actually the modern term that's a little bit more respectful.
I'll try and use that a bit more. Actually, that makes it seem more fancy. You're saying they're from Romania.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Which is of course connected to Transylvania too, because Transylvania is part of really.
And Bela Lugosi really works for that. I mean, he's Hungarian.
That's absolutely true.
That's right about there. Hungary, Romania. That's all the quote gypsy area.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that word is kind of frowned upon. But I think it's similar to the word Eskimo. People used to say Eskimo all the time, with Inuit and First Nations, Arctic native. There's different ways of saying those things. But it's all, Eskimo I think is kind of frowned upon, except when you're talking about the dessert.
So, do you know anything about the dog they used for playing Bela Lugosi as the werewolf?
Either he was his dog before or his dog after. I think that they befriended each other. I think because the dog...
Oh, it was a German Shepherd that was named Moose.
He took a good...
And Chaney adopted him because he found him on set. They used him for that, and he took a good bite of him, and now they're friends forever.
Yeah, exactly, and it's so sweet. And it makes sense, too, because you can basically play wrestle with your dog, and they could put these, noises in the background.
Yeah, apparently, I watched the trailer, and he was fighting, like, a bear. I think so. I was like, it's obviously not in this movie. So
that's part of the.
Speaking of wrestling,
that's part of the original script. Because interestingly enough,
is it because to show that he's basically outside of being the wolf?
As absolutely the reason why, William. So you're absolutely right. Good call. And I'm glad that's not in it, because I think that the psychological elements are good, but ultimately the movie would not be as iconic, and I think influential on future werewolf movies, if not for the transformation. That's the best thing about the werewolf movies sometimes, is the transformation and the makeup.
Yeah, although I feel like the detriment of the psychologicalness is that there's not a strong cast of side characters.
No, there's not.
You can forget most all of them. There's like Frank, I don't remember his name.
Oh man, I need to...
He only appears once.
I need to pull up the names of everybody.
And there's like the doctor, and there's these three people that do barely anything. The gamekeeper, the doctor,
Colonel Montfort,
and the Colonel.
Yeah. So let's see here. Of course, okay.
Oh, the village was set in a set they called the Court of Miracles, which was on the Universal backlot, which they used for Dracula and Frankenstein. Obviously, Frankenstein had that village. Of course, the father was carrying her dead daughter through. Named after the Miracle Man, starring Lon Chaney.
Oh, yeah. Also, isn't there I'm thinking the Court of Fools. That's from Hunchback. Okay, sorry. Claude, of course, Lon Chaney Jr. wanted to do Hunchback of Notre Dame, but it went to Charles Laughton, which I'm glad it did, because Charles Laughton really killed it in that role. Interestingly enough, there's another story that was floating around that basically, because of this really toxic relationship between Lon Chaney Sr. and Lon Chaney Jr.'s mother, they left each other, and Lon Chaney Jr. is left to live with Lon, but he was told his mother was dead.
That's what I was thinking about the child issues.
Yeah.
He's like, first from, like Donkey and Ice to your mother is dead.
Yeah, but he learns after Lon Sr. died that she was alive. So wow.
So that man, was Lon Chaney not good with
No, but honestly, he hated so much what the wife was doing and saying, and he was like, I don't want my child brought up in a world that you exist in, so you're just not going to exist. That's a little harsh, and he was a little bit harsh with stuff, but even if you have good intentions, that's really sad to have a child know, or never know.
So we've sort of glanced on, the production, how it exists. What about the cast? Obviously, we've covered Claude Rains extensively in The Invisible Man.
We did.
Lon
Please
Chaney
watch-
Jr. is
listen to
a
that
new
episode.
one for us, and you sort of, talked about his life. Is there any more things to talk about concerning
Okay,
the cast?
Maria Ospinskaya. I have not seen anything with her in it except for The Wolfman, and I believe it's Frankenstein meets The Wolfman, I think, is she's in as well. Well, she was mostly a Russian actress. She was also an acting teacher. Her full name is Maria Alexeyevna Ospinskaya.
Well, that's why they shorten it. That's why they shorten it.
I'm doing the best I can. Okay, but she plays Maleva. She was born during the era of the Tsar, and that was like 1900s, early 1900s.
Yeah, they had like the Tsar, and then later on, of course, they went to the president.
She was trained by the Konstantin Stanislavski, which is where the Stanislavski method comes from. I don't remember exactly what the Stanislavski method is, but it's very interesting. It's about inhabiting roles, I think. So she was a dancer as well as a stage actor, and she's done some other movies, very dramatic stuff, little small roles. And sometimes she would, it was very memorable, and she would be on screen and you just be like, wow. And she'd only have been there for like a minute and you're just like amazed. But she was also in, we talked about Korngold, right? And
Eric Korngold in the Robin Hood music. Inspiration for John Williams,
King's
who did,
Row.
Harry Potter and Star Wars.
From King's Row in 1942. She's in that movie. So that's the only interesting thing I can say about that.
That's cool. Maybe she was some queen or duchess or something. That'd be fun, but I wouldn't think so. I think she'd be more like a commoner.
Sometimes.
That's her field. That's always
she was
her
an
field.
Amazon queen in Tarzan and the Amazons in 1945. Now, very shortly after one of her last movies was done, they believe that she died. She had a stroke after the stress of being in a burning house. And the burning house is probably because she was smoking a cigarette and she fell asleep and it fell into the bed and started burning. That's what people say. Don't smoke when you're sleeping. So that's terrible.
Don't smoke in your bedroom, guys.
Well, the way she walked was thorny, though it was no fault of her own. And as the rain entered the soil, the river enters the sea. So tears run to a predestined end. Her suffering is over. Now she'll find peace for eternity. Wow. Okay, I'm sorry. A lot of these guys, I'm sorry, I don't know very well. I do know there's a couple of actors that come back in other Universal Monster movies. We'll mention them. But I don't want to dig too deeply into kind of a character that actor that we'll probably never see again. I'm sorry. That's just how I am. Okay, so Warren William played Dr. Lloyd. Now he did play, he was one of the first actors to play Perry Mason. Of course, I remember Raymond Burr, who played Perry Mason for many years, and Raymond Burr we'll of course see in the American remake of Godzilla, the 1954 one, that he plays a character that kind of is the American eyes to the whole Godzilla thing, so it can be an American carryover. As he's been in a lot of different things. He'll play like ruthless, amoral businessmen, crafty lawyers, charlatans, controversial roles, but highly satisfying stuff.
Yeah, for all the ASMR people be going down to this movie for the doctor dude.
What? Because his whispery voice. Okay, so let's see. We got Ralph Bellamy, who played Colonel Paul Montford. I think he was like the constable, or is Colonel Montford like the gamekeeper? I'm confused. Do you remember?
Frank was the...
Oh, and I remember Frank because he's part of the love triangle between Larry and Gwen Conliffe.
If it could call it a love triangle, I mean, it's a really... We'll talk
Loosely,
about the
yeah,
plot, how stupid...
Yeah.
It's a unique love triangle, but I don't...
I digress. But we will see Ralph Bellamy again. He plays a character in The Ghost of Frankenstein, 1942. So we'll see him again. So Frank Andrews, again, part of the triangle, if you can call it that, is played by Patrick Knowles. He actually, the funny thing is that he was in another movie where Heartthrob, Cary Grant, a funny guy, funny and handsome, and just really good actor, really memorable guy. Patrick Knowles played a character that was kind of like, in like a rom-com or whatever, there's like the guy who's the boyfriend of the girl, and then the really cool guy comes along, and there's kind of this he gets passed over, for the cool guy, and everybody wants to see the cool guy and the girl get together, and the other guy is just kind of like, what about me? That's what he was, played it.
But honestly, like, anyone named Patrick, honestly, are pretty cool, like, dudes, honestly. I could say, like, Patrick Stewart, Patrick Warburton, and Patrick Knowles. Actually, that would be a really good trio for, like, some comedy.
And Jason Patrick, the actor, plus Jason Patrick, me. Okay, so, by the way, Patrick Knowles played Will Scarlet in The Adventures of Robin Hood.
Yes. I was like, I remember his name, but I don't know.
I remember the face. I remember faces, not names as much. But we will see Mr. Knowles again in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. He plays Dr. Mannering in that. So we get to see some of these actors again, not all of them. In The Ghost of Frankenstein, we get to see Bela Lugosi again as a role that I've really grown to love him in as Igor. Now, some people even said that the poem, Even a Man Who's Pure in Heart Says His Prayers by Night, that whole thing, it's not, it doesn't exist. It's made up by Kurt Siodmak.
Kurt Siodmak really loved to make his own stuff up and then recite it like a
three times. He did 3 times because Shakespeare, whenever he wanted to make a point, would like repeat something 3 times throughout the play, and he took that to make part of that. The reception was very good. It's considered a classic.
Yeah, people would think this would be the underdog, but no, it's not really.
No, but you know what? The most important...
I mean, this is the only movie that, the Wolfman stars in his, like, his own, role. It's not a crossover.
That's right, not yet, but they were kind of, they went, let's do that, let's...
But, he is his own man, and he has his own character arc, and every time the Wolfman is played, it's played by Lon Chaney Jr., so you always get, that emotive, that character arc going on.
They wanted to do a Wolfman meets Dracula, but that doesn't quite happen until the House movies. There's House of Dracula and House of Frankenstein. There is a Dracula character in there, so you do kind of have it where the Wolfman kind of meets him.
So what about how much of a profit did it make?
Okay. Well, I'm not sure how much money that it made. I know that it did quite well. It was not a flop at all. It did quite well.
So critics were happy.
The critics were happy. The biggest thing about this movie is the legacy of it.
Establishing werewolf, myth. Lore, myth. For ages to come.
Also, the mini sequels.
Like, people would think, that just came from, the Greek or whatever, like, the literature, like, normal stuff comes from. But no, it came from Universal Monster
And there
movies.
was a remake. Universal did do a 2010 remake of The Wolfman.
I hear it's probably not as great.
It's not as great.
And you think of the 2010s. The 2010s would not do great with that.
A lot gorier, and the makeup has some CGI additions to it, which is interesting. I will say that. Joe Johnston directed it, who directed The Rocketeer and Captain America: The First Avenger. He was really good with that kind of material. It did have a Larry Talbot. It had a Gwen Conliffe. Strangely enough, the dad was a werewolf too. Is played by Anthony Hopkins. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the dude in the trailer, and I was like, man, I feel like I would recognize that.
He looks
dude.
He had some elements of his face that look very similar to Lon Chaney Jr., but a different style.
But speaking about Lon Chaney Jr., I wanted to talk about the philosophy about Harry. Because
Larry,
as we're talking about, Larry. Thank you. Too many Harrys.
Larry, who is Harry?
Larry's a new one.
Larry,
whatever. So, last episode, we talked about Sigmund Freud's theory about the id, the ego, and the superego as it relates to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The splitting of personalities, duality of nature. And yeah, that applies to this too. I want to jump off the points I made in that episode. The theme of identity and transformation is the core theme of this picture as well. I'm going to go, look back there for sort of the start of the discussion and then, bring some of that into here. I wanted to talk about identity as it relates to free will and civilization. There's the existentialist philosopher.
Okay.
His name is Friedrich Nietzsche.
Writer of Nietzsche.
I was trying to figure out.
It's close enough.
It does not look like a 2-syllable word, but whatever.
I know.
He's the writer of Thus Spake Zarathustra.
Yes.
Which is iconic for da 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 is the song that was made around that.
2001: Space Odyssey.
I don't think it originated from 2001: Space Odyssey. It was a classical piece.
He talked about fantastic causalities, which was behind the will of the group, the herd mentality. Civilization, which is a mass covering humanity's true nature, which is a nature driven by power, aggression, and domination. That was his thought process. That there's the thin line between society and savagery. The Lord of the Flies is a book all about that stuff, I will say. Related is Arthur Schopenhauer, who believed that the whole world has a will, that civilization ceaselessly strives and suffers by this insatiable blind will. But I don't want to go too deep into nihilism and the absurdity of existence. That's a big rabbit hole. Speaking of the absurdity of existence, Larry Talbot is sort of like Albert Camus's absurd hero, who is confronting the tumultuous yet indifferent universe, reconciling with his place in it. I believe the example he used was Sisyphus. He's rolling this boulder up a hill.
Yeah, the rock.
For eternity. And, this absurd existence that he's placed himself in. Larry Talbot also reminds me of the noble savage, as we talked about a bit in various episodes. We talked about the noble savage.
Talked about that in Tarzan, too.
Like in Tarzan, it was this, savage, but, noble.
Reconciling the beastly parts of himself and taming it. Tarzan tamed it.
Yeah, confronting, this universe in reconciling his place within it is really what, Larry Talbot is doing. He's going as we'll see later in the plot, he is, at the point if he can't even enter a church without, going I don't belong here in a church.
Yeah, I noticed that when he went into the crypt. Of course, he was also feeling really just sad that he caused this man to die. Because he killed Bella.
And then there's also identity as it relates to transformation. There is a book called The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. It's about a man named Gregor Samsa. He wakes up one morning to realize he is a giant bug. So Gregor, just like Larry, is also, he also struggles with his own humanity and his place in society. Greg is literally alienated from his friends, his family, and living a normal life because he literally is a bug-eyed monster, at least in the eyes of them. So you could say he's literally alienated, from living normal life. He's gotta, he can't encounter human beings because they would scream and hate him.
Absolutely.
And all the things.
But also there's one element that is a little bit more, I think, simple and very close to the skin that everybody deals with.
Oh, is this the allegory for puberty thing?
It can be seen as such.
I don't really get that.
Well,
I don't
okay,
really get that vibes.
Okay, think about this. You're going along, you're 11, 12 years old, you've got the kind of baby face and there's no extra hair sprouting, there's no changes happening, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, hair starts sprouting out of your face, your voice deepens, there's urges, there's different, you're gangly, whereas before, you didn't notice that your body, sometimes your body is growing faster than your mind can catch up with it. And so you're clumsy. Your body is not your own. You feel like, what's going on, and things even out and you get used to it. But there's elements of transformation that everybody goes through. And if you think about it, many times some of the early horror stuff that you watch, it affects you at the time that you watched it. So if you were a young man at the time and you went to go see a movie about the Wolf Man, it kind of stuck with you and made you think, you started, maybe you could think that it was related to you. But ultimately, I don't think those are things that Kurt Siodmak sat down and went, I'm going to make a movie about puberty. No, it's those are just things that people kind of picked up from. I don't think there's anybody that hasn't had an issue with anger or control over their emotions and their emotions controlling them. And so those are some elements too, but
So it's really sort of allegorizing, we talked about so far we've talked about the war. We've talked about, finding a place in life and identity that is, changing, and, do you accept that, or in this case, do you need to be, put inside of a coffin?
The monstrous things that humans do. Remember Kurt Siodmak and his view of the Nazis. You've got monsters that walk around like humans and look just like us. So it's Anybody has the capability to be a beast, is what he's saying, and yeah.
And so the beast is within our own minds. As
yes.
we talk about the psychology.
So
element.
that's more true than not. I've never seen anybody transform into a wolf, but I've seen people, deal with the mazes of their own mind when it comes to, psychology and the cage that your own brain can be for you.
So, this has sort of been our thoughts about, why do we like this movie? It's because, of some of these elements. It's very, the protagonist is meant to be, relatable. This movie definitely does have some quality to it. But in the next section, we are going to cover the plot and sort of, what we thought of the movie and how it presents itself. And, is this a good start for, the Wolfman franchise? Does it, match, the other Universal monster movies? I could say so.
Yeah, it has some longevity. I mean,
it has some
longevity. Good longevity.
Longevity.
Well, I think that the movies they saw something in this character that people could relate to. You see that, and the great thing about it is the same actor playing it over multiple movies. You can see, where this actor wants to take it, and I think that's a good thing.
Yes, and lastly, is Kurt Sudmak a good writer? Based on how well, he had a plan for how this movie went out. And do I need to unsay the things I say about the ape? Probably. I will say that
well, Kurt Sudmak can be hit or miss sometimes, and this one was a hit. This one was a hit. I thought the ape was a little bit of a miss.
He didn't do that well with the ape, but later as he got on, he sort of got that grip in the Universal space.
Yeah, I think that happens. You get better over time.
So lastly, there was also even more. Lastly, I just wanted to say that there was I believe there was the next evolution in the Universal Wolf things was She-Wolf of London. Now I don't think we're doing She-Wolf.
We are.
Of London,
I think we are doing that one.
If we are, we would be doing it in season 3.
I think so, yeah. And it's probably one of the late. Now there are other werewolf movies to come. There is one that we'll do in the future. It's a Hammer movie, and so of course, you get some of that nice bright red blood. That is Oliver Reed, who is in Curse of the Werewolf. So we'll see other werewolf movies going forward, but as they went into the 70s and 80s, they got a lot more adult and got a lot more bloody. The special effects were amazing, but there's things that don't quite fit what we're kind of doing with the podcast. So, we'll see some pretty good ones, but then we'll probably leave those behind for a while.
Yeah. And also, by the time this should be out, we will have likely done our second live stream on our Cinematic Fantastic YouTube channel. We'll be doing some fun there, or we'll have done something there. Obviously, with the recording times, it's never going to be, set in stone when exactly, we come out. Because we release these verbatim, we release these, very fluidly. We don't usually have a really strict schedule for most all of the season. We probably should be, but,
We do what we want, yeah.
Really go check that out after this, if not our next episode. But until then, we're going to do the plot after this break.
Welcome back to the second half of episode 36 of Cinematic Fantastics, semi-deep dive into 1941's The Wolfman, starring Lon Chaney Jr. and Claude Rains. William, you did lots of looking into the plot on this, and I would love to re-examine this movie, almost like we're watching it together in our own minds. I would love to dig in this with you. So take it away anytime you're ready.
Okay, let's dig into this thing like we are digging a hole in our owner's backyard.
To uncover a bone or to bury one? Or, well, I didn't quite see him burying any bones.
All right, let's let the dogs out. Or if you're in Australia, take them off of your feet, as that is the slang for flip-flops.
Take your shoes off or something like that?
Yes.
Right.
Take your shoes off, or else they're going to turn really hairy. And so
the dingo ate my baby. Right.
Where are we right now? Anyway.
Werewolf anywhere. Where
we are
wolf.
in Wales. In the first scene, we see a Larry Talbot. He's enjoying the amazing special effects that are around him, which is what we call being in front of a green screen and looking around as if there's stuff around.
And I love this car. I love his car. I did a little bit of research on the car. I realized that it's actually a collector's item, and even then was a really high in demand car.
Yeah, all you have to do is take the wheels off of it and take the engine out of it, and now it's a collector's item.
Oh wow! No. You could actually collect it now for it's really expensive to buy one of those now. And that's one of the things about this movie is they've got horse-drawn carriages, and they've got Bavarian-looking some houses, and they've got Romani gypsies, and they've got 1930s other things. It's just all smushed together in kind of a weird way.
Yeah, I will say that as this movie is casted with mostly Americans, so this movie feels more American than UK to me. I think, if you think about it a little bit more, suspension of disbelief out the window, because you go this is Britain, right? They don't speak with accents.
Well, I think Gwen Conliffe is Welsh, and then and her dad is too, and then you got Claude Rains, with his gravelly voice, which I love. But yeah, it's meant to be kind of a fairy tale. You're you're not going, hey, that doesn't look like Wales.
Evelyn Akers is American, so you can't really.
No, I think she actually was born to two British parents in Chile or something. She was born, but so she was.
Okay,
she was born,
that's weird.
Yeah, you'd have to look into that. I don't think she's fully American. I think she was born to some European parents.
I don't know. She assimilated any of those three accents that you could have, but cool to hear her speak some Spanish in another film.
But Lon Chaney Jr. is 100% red-blooded American male.
They are driving up to Larry Talbot's old family house in Wales. It's Talbot Castle, to bury his brother who recently passed away. He also wants to patch things up with his estranged dad, Sir John Talbot. Paula's childhood friend is also there. He just became the chief constable, but he leaves immediately. So Larry sits down on the arm of the chair, and I was like, dude, why are you not sitting normally on the chair? But yeah, he sits down on the arm of the chair as he's talking to his dad. His dad does not like it that he'd been gone for so long, and he only returned when his twin brother died. Suspicious. Are you gonna swoop in and inherit his brother's spoils?
I don't think he did. I don't think he killed him. Is that what you're secretly?
No, he's gonna swoop in on his brother's spoils only because the castle is free. Do you come back? It's not a prodigal son situation here.
No, and it's his twin, because if you look up at the painting, it's like spitting image of Lon Chaney Jr.
Exactly. Maybe it is a photo of Lon Chaney Jr. Anyway, no, it's a painting.
Well, one more thing about this is
a portrait.
Yeah, a portrait. The thing to look at is the father and son relationship in this is very interesting.
The actors that they are played by.
Yes.
Seriously, casting Claude Rains as the father of Lon Chaney Jr. is like casting Peter Dinklage as the father of Andre Rene Rosamov.
Oh, the giant. Andre the Giant. That's great. You do.
Anybody want to feed it?
I love that. I love that you knew his full name. I'm impressed. All right, so here's the other part
honestly,
of that.
Yeah, you just imagine a situation like that. You have this, really tall, low voice versus this, poshish Claude Rains, who's really pretty short. And I mean, not to rag on short people, I am definitely not gonna go above 5'7" anytime in my life. So
we don't know that. We'll see.
Short people are great. Peter Dinklage, more like Peter really Goodich. I hear he's a great comedian too.
No, he's got a good
getting recommended as shorts, and I'm like, I don't really super want to watch any of that right now, but yeah, they're pretty great.
Saturday Night Live Space Pants is goofy. Okay, here's the thing. The thing that you want to look at is you got the father and son relationship between the characters, of course, but I can't help but think about it for a minute is this kind of the interesting relationship between Lon Chaney and his dad. Like, how did any of that, did he bring any of that, I think, into the role? just the anguish or any kind of connection there. You go with what you have. You play.
I feel like it would have been moderately different to his real life relationship with his dad.
Yeah.
So yeah, as they are talking, a wooden box of glass is brought in, so they go up to the telescope room. It's so weird that like this, it's this weird like prop of just like a card. It's like this wooden crate, and then there's like scrawled out letters, and then like glass, all in caps. So it's like okay.
Yeah, it's actually like probably like the the big the lenses that you put into.
Yeah, it's the lenses they put into the telescope. So they're gonna go up to the telescope room.
They have to put glass on there because so people will be careful. I guess later on people put fragile on everything.
Yeah, instead it's just glass.
Yeah, be careful. Don't break that glass.
Yeah, exactly. So they're up in the astronomy room. The father is talking with them about, what do you know about astronomy and all that? And Larry he doesn't really know too much about it. He's like,
Not especially. I'm all right with tools. In fact, I've done quite a little work with astronomical instruments, but when it comes to theory, I'm pretty much of an amateur.
And so his father looks to the telescope, giving a street-level view of the road, which honestly, when I rewatched it, I was like, wait, how are you seeing it from the street all the way up in your window?
It's a telescope, though, to see the stars. Why doesn't he test it by pointing it into the sky?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, because it's midday or something?
Well, yeah, of course, you're not going to see very well, but maybe that was a quick test. Oh, yeah, it works.
Yeah, it works. It has superpowers. Street-level view.
Yeah.
My Google Maps view of the world.
So you've got stars that he's talking about. And the interesting thing is, how people talk about your fate is written in the stars, and you got astrology. If you're in this particular birth sign or house thing, it controls your destiny. And I just was thinking that's exactly what Larry Talbot is going to deal with. He's going to deal with a star, so to speak, that's going to control his destiny. It's like the fate that's beyond your ability to stop it. So yeah.
So his father leaves off because I guess there isn't much more to talk about. So there, Larry, after seeing various buildings, is where Larry catches eye on a girl named Gwen Conliffe.
Uh-oh.
Who later we learn runs the antique shop. I also noticed on one of the buildings beside this antique shop is Sane Man Ltd. or Limited, which is a company. Is that symbolism for anything? Sane Man? I feel like it could be.
It definitely could be because he's like,
or like,
is he crazy?
It could be a Saul Goodman, thing where it's like, we're Sane Man.
Well,
honestly, that would work as well as Saul Goodman would work.
Well, what I was trying to say is that is he crazy or not? That's a constant thing. He's like, do I need to just go to an asylum or something? His dad's like, no.
The antique shop is, a sort of safe place for him, I guess. That's a bit of a stretch because it's like it is beside the antique shop. Looking into it a little bit hardly because
I know.
The Sane Man doesn't get brought up. But when I saw it, I was like, symbolism? But then it never.
Well, insanity does.
I mean, Kurt Sudmak, he be loving his symbolisms.
Yeah, he does.
So, yeah, Larry decides to go down there and be a massive creep by immediately asking to buy her jewelry that he saw in the telescope. No hesitance to say that he spied on her as well. He's like, I want your earrings, specifically the earrings sitting on your dressing room,
bro,
that
yeah,
I saw from
seriously.
a telescope. And, bro, seriously.
Yeah,
so
he's coming off really creepy to this girl.
Instead, she's like, how about you buy a cane? We've got some nice canes of, dogs and stuff. He eventually spies eye on a fancy walking stick with a silver wolf's head. Gwen tells Larry its design is inspired by werewolves, people who transform into wolves when the autumn moon is bright and leave a pentagram on their victims. This poem is repeated verbatim throughout even the series. Apparently they would drop the word autumn in the sequels.
Yeah.
To say when the full moon is bright instead of when the autumn moon is bright.
Yeah, because they wanted to.
Because otherwise you would never be able to transform unless it's set in autumn. So
right, didn't want that to control when the movie took place.
Although eventually, yeah, I feel like the sequel would probably set firmly into the lore that it's not that, every night in the autumn, like in the first movie, it's when the full moon.
The full moon, right? Which is like a day and a couple days before and after, during the month.
But yeah, this poem in quotes is said many different times throughout the series.
Even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night will become a wolf when wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. Did I do it?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, I didn't even look at the screen, I promise. That's awesome.
But throughout their interaction, he is constantly asking for a date. Even when she says no, here's, a clip of her just absolutely refusing. Yet he is like, yes, we are going on a date after all. And she's like, no.
We'll take a little walk tonight, then we'll talk it over.
No.
See you at 8.
No.
How about tonight?
No.
I mean, you were talking earlier about the 3 times thing, and this was like 3 times, so, but it
What
didn't
is the
work.
deal with guys in these movies, especially American guys that just will not take no for an answer?
Yeah, American guys who won't take no for an answer and airplane food are the most highly debated topics in the history of cinema.
Oh, wow. And the other thing is that we've learned quite a bit about I think human interaction since, especially since the 40s, okay? I mean, even the 60s and 70s, when they were trying to, women's equality and things like that.
Yeah,
and
but this is like different. This guy is being really scummy, yet they are not really, treating this as like exactly like wrong. Like they're still into each other, as we see later.
Yeah, they're playing it off like, isn't he charming? Plus, she's already got like a boyfriend. Are we getting to that yet?
No, not yet, but we will.
Okay.
So after going to the antique shop, he immediately goes to his father and spills the beans on everything. Man, does this man have no filter at all? And his father confirms that werewolves are real. He repeats the same poem, and he urges, he urges them, make more of these friends. Friends are good, especially when you're moving back into a place you're so unfamiliar with for like years.
I don't know if he said werewolves are absolutely real. I think he was hinting that.
Well, no, he's like, the werewolf legend does exist. That I didn't mean real, but I meant
the legend is what she said was right. It does. The legend exists, but he didn't confirm or deny that werewolves were absolutely real.
It wasn't hogwash made up by her own mind. It was hogwash made up by Kurt Sudmak. Oh, no.
Yeah, and a lot of people that he stole from, that's perfectly fine.
They do meet up back together again in the night, because, he's like, has this date, and he's like, see you at 8, even though she's like, no. So, in this interaction, they just meet up, on the street, and, who else did you expect, he says. Nobody, she says. And he also says, I was waiting for you in the dark, and I'm like, I don't really like this dude.
Yeah, I like him, but I think he comes off kind of creepy. I mean, I kind of like him because I like the character, but I think I forgot how creepy he was. I think.
Yeah. Also, they enter into the antique store, and out comes into there as well. Gwen's friend Jenny is going to accompany them along. I also wanted to say that misty fog behind the door is so good. Like that, just. All the misty fog in this is so great. The fog machines that they had in 1940.
But let me tell you something real quick about that fog. It's very thick, and it's not the best to be breathing in heavily.
That could suffocate you.
No, that actually happened to Evelyn Ankers. There was one part when she falls into the fog or gets thrown to the ground. That I'll tell you the story when we get to that point. Remind me, but it's not fun for her. But
they're like, instead of her dying, knocked out by the wolf man, instead she's knocked out by suffocating in the thick of the fog that is thick on the ground.
That's what happened in real life, not in the story.
But yeah, I guess we know what happened if Silent Hill 2 was real, then the dude was just suffocate in the parking lot.
Yes, it's all controlled by that corgi dog in a control room. He did it all.
I want to see like some like horror movie based upon this a mist monster.
There's two movies I can think of. One of them is called The Mist, and it's based upon a Stephen King novel.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, a whole town gets enveloped in this mist, and creatures are coming out of the mist of just insane designs. And what ends up the thought process is that there are military experiments that are piercing the veil between our dimension and another, and the mist is coming out of it, and so are these creatures. And the main character and some other characters, including this really crazy Bible thumping woman who thinks it's the apocalypse, they all get holed up in a.
Okay, this is seriously giving me the first Silent Hill vibes.
They all get holed up in a shopping like a grocery store. And she starts.
And there's a shopping mall.
and they start looking at who's at fault. Who shouldn't be here in this place with us? We need to chuck them out the door and then let these creatures just take them. It's pretty. It has one of the saddest, most crazy endings. But anyway, there's another one called The Fog by John Carpenter, same guy who did Halloween and The Thing and all that. It was about these old, I guess, sailors. Zombies coming back to life, coming out of the water, coming through the fog and attacking. It's very creepy. The remake is terrible. I think it has Karen Allen in it from Indiana Jones. But
I mean, when you get to, like, Halloween 15, Halloween's already not going to be that great.
Well, he had a lot to do with the first and second one, but I think a lot of it, was gone. The magic. I say the magic was gone by
oftentimes when a director makes the movie exist, then if you get rid of him, then it's gonna feel like a hollow shell. But anyway, we're getting on a big tangent. Yeah, despite her refusing him, Gwen, Larry, and Gwen's friend Jenny head off into the woods that night to get their fortunes told. They enter the tent of a mystical fortune teller named Bella. Jenny decides to go at first, so Larry could force himself on Gwen again. There's an interaction where, she says, maybe I should, draw the curtains or enjoy the curtains, I think she says. And he's like, no, don't do that. Or, I mean, not a cat of meat. I mean, but she reveals she's engaged already. So it's a little bit of swamp water.
That's where you reveal that, yeah. And then now they're calling it a triangle. But if you think about it,
it is the weirdest love triangle in the face of love triangles.
It is. Plus, the roles that the guy who plays Frank Andrews, who's the third, well, is he the third wheel or is he the first wheel? The roles he's played is generally the boyfriend of the main character, like the female, and the cool guy just swoops in and she's pulled away, and he's like, oh, but what about me? And I'm like, they must have cast him for that very reason, so they could kind of go, yeah, she's really got the thing for Larry more than you, buddy. He always comes out second best, and it sucks, man. It's kind of like that's his fate.
Yeah, meanwhile, Jenny asks Bella if she is gonna get married, and Bella's like, the audacity of this woman. And he's putting his hand on his head. We see a star on his forehead, and he looks at Jenny's left hand. He's doing the tarots, and he looks at her left hand.
Tarot cards.
Tarot cards.
Tarot.
So yeah, he looks at her left hand and freaks out because there is a star on it, and she is Werewolf Chow, is the lore. Basically. Right. So he kicks her out in a hurry, and guess what? The moment she leaves, a wolf is on the chase, and Jenny starts screaming. So Larry goes up to where the wolf has killed Jenny and beats the wolf with a cane. He manages to beat it down before stumbling dramatically because he's gotten a bit on the chest, you see.
Well, one thing about Bella's appearance. Okay, so one of the things that has stumped people, and they've been like, why, is when you see Larry Talbot as the werewolf, he's a bipedal wolf kind of man. When you see Bella as the werewolf, he looks like a wolf German Shepherd looking four-legged thing. I have my own theory on this. Bella has been a werewolf longer than Larry, and maybe years and years. And if Larry is the werewolf for long enough, which he doesn't get a chance to be as werewolf for as longer. I guess that's my headcanon, and I'm making that up myself.
I feel like it was a remnant of when Kurt Sudmak did not originally want him to transform into the Wolf Man.
I like that idea. That makes more sense, but I think my idea gives a reason, but it doesn't. My idea doesn't make sense. Yours makes more sense, but I think mine's fun.
Yeah, you could say so. So,
yeah.
Again, to introduce this a little ahead of where it would have been introduced in the movie, we have Maliva, who is the, Bella's mother, who is
yes.
accompanies her in this caravan thing. And so Maliva comes up and helps Gwen get Larry home in her little carriage, horse carriage thing that she uses throughout the movie. So when the police show up to investigate the crime, the murdering, they find Jenny's dead body, a brutally murdered Bella, and Larry's walking stick. So guess what? The cops go up to Talbot Castle next morning suspecting Larry at fault. Because the cane, as we saw, is a good murder weapon, so, you know.
Yeah, supposedly because the silver on it is what messes with because silver is a symbol of purity, and also the clergy, like priests, would bless, the silver in terms of like crucifixes and all that kind of stuff. So that's where I think Sudmak got those ideas. And here's the other thing too, is somebody had this theory about why Dracula doesn't show up in mirrors, because they used to put they had silver-backed mirrors. It was the silver and another alloy, and supposedly because the silver
was reflective in the first place.
It is reflective. The old school mirrors were, because the silver backing, it like doesn't show him, like it absorbs the image of him or something. That would show.
It absorbs evil.
Or they used to say the eyes are the windows of the soul or something, and you see somebody's embodiment of their soul in the mirror,
and the soul is empty,
and he doesn't have one. So
actually, you know what? That could be a good lore reason. Next, if we ever write a vampire book, that's what I'm gonna put in there.
It's more of a spiritual reason, yeah. And there's a science fiction book I'm gonna read that has a vampire thing in it where it kind of scientifies it. Well, I can't make it. It basically these creatures can see both in the horizontal space and the vertical space. And nature doesn't have right angles, it has curves. And in the modern world, we created all the right angles with homes and all the things that we built. And these creatures have been in hibernation for like thousands of years. And when they come out, they see the right angles, and it gives them like paroxysms. They like get seizures. They hate, it messes with their vision. Everybody thought it was crosses, but it was really the right angles that was screwing with them. So, yeah.
that is very, very interesting.
It is. It's kooky.
Artificiality versus, naturality, if you could say.
Yeah, and they have hunter vision with the the vertical and the horizontal, and then with the right angles, it makes it where they can't pinpoint you.
That is very interesting.
Yeah.
What is interesting is Larry
werewolves
trying to defend himself, because he's like, of course I didn't. I was attacking a wolf. He's blamed crazy because what remained was a man and not a wolf, for he transformed back. And Larry tries to show him his wolf bite, and his wolf bite miraculously healed.
Really
when
quick.
He went to show it. And Maliva has mysteriously disappeared when she delivers them. She just ups and ats it and is gone when they look back.
Yeah, she seems to do that. She's kind of short too, so she just kind of disappears off in the distance.
No harm to short people, but
No. And she's a sweet character. I like her character.
Yeah. Also, on top of that, Larry and Gwen's absence during Jenny's attack fuels rumors of an affair, so the locals are hating him too.
Oh.
Lots of hot water. Unfortunately, his father sorts it out with him that he doesn't go to the asylum, so that's good. Next scene, Larry tells the Crypt Keepers who are setting Bella's coffin in, crypt.
Yeah.
He attempts to look in there before Maliva appears, who's wanting to pray over her son herself, instead of, the bishop. And the bishop's like leaving, your superstition.
Fighting against superstition is as hard as fighting against Satan himself.
Yeah, and she says she does she talks to Bella and she says, the way you walked was thorny, though no fault of your own. Just like the waters go to the sea.
Yeah, you can't.
Tears of the predestined end.
You're already fudging it a little. But whatever. This blessing poem reciting, first of 3 times said in this movie. After that, she leaves, and she doesn't see Larry standing conspicuously beside a pillar as this is happening.
He is really close. How she missed him? She has no peripheral. She has no peripheral
very
vision.
Conspicuously beside this pillar, and she does not see him. Okay.
Yeah, that's a little much to believe. He goes up
and he has big remorse over, the grave. He has big remorse over his.
It's my fault. He's like, it's my fault. I killed Bella.
Yes. And he's probably really not used to, being default of anything. That was probably the first time he's ever murdered anything, or a human, or what he knew was a human. So after that, Gwen's father is confronted by Jenny's mom and her female cohorts, as I don't know who they really are. I don't know. They're the book club or something. The knitting suite.
They're the Wales Karens.
Yeah, they're the people who saw the club in the magazine and have joined up the woman's group. I don't know.
Yep.
That's gotta be it. Anyways, Larry steps in, which scares them off. He's come to apologize to her, but mostly to express frustration that he couldn't have been wrong about. He's like, I swear, I attacked a wolf. It wasn't Bella. I swear, I wasn't having delusions like the doctor is telling me I did. A new guy named Frank Andrews, who we learned is the Talbot Estate gamekeeper, he pops in at the antique store with a doggo that does not like Harry a whole lot. Larry.
Larry, yeah. Larry.
Harry is easier to say, and we also do have quite a few Harrys in, the progress of our classic movie journey.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you go check those out and see all the other movies where it was Harry instead of Larry.
Larry.
I believe
that's him.
the Mummy had a Harry in it, but don't call me on that.
Right.
So since Larry is not eager to hog her away from her assumed fiance, he heads off. So, I guess he has other thoughts, when he sees, that she already has a boyfriend.
He's like,
there.
Stay away from my girl.
Yeah, but even still, it does not really work overall in this movie. So next scene, Frank and Gwen are at a carnival, and they run into Larry. I guess the music was Hungarian style, which was proven correct by the dancing lady in this Hungarian style dress. Because obviously you've got the Hungarian dance number 5 that goes da 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 as one little section of the part of the beat section part, whatever you call it. And then in this movie, it has the soundtrack that has a lot of that figure. And so I'm like, is this Hungarian? And then I see the Hungarian-looking woman, or Hungarian-dressed woman, and I'm like, well, yeah, that's gotta be true. So Frank challenges Larry to a shooting game involving cardboard cutouts of ducks, tigers, and wolves, which Larry cannot vie to win due to PTSD. So amidst all the chaos in his soul, Larry seeks guidance from Bella's mom, Oliva, who confirms that the wolf that bit him was actually Bella in werewolf form. So now Larry has become a werewolf himself. We have it in the intro. We have it, the clip in the intro. I'll play it here.
Bitten by a werewolf and lives, becomes a werewolf himself.
It is a very iconic line, which is why my dad, put it there in our intro. So Maliva reveals that the only way to kill the werewolf is with silver, and so gives Larry a protective charm to stop further transformations of the future. Larry does also tell her that he saw her in the crypt. Do you have no filter? Anyway, Larry, wanting to protect Gwen instead of himself, passes the charm to her, hoping it'll keep her safe from the impending danger. So he doesn't care about himself, transforming into a werewolf and killing everyone. He only cares about her. So, the entire village could go. All 23 people in this village could go. And she stays. That's his idea. That's his idea.
I don't think he thought about the logic of this.
That's his trolley problem. Either kill 23 villagers or your girlfriend on the trolley track, and he picks the 23 villagers.
Right.
They're old anyway, I guess. I don't know. There are children. There's got to be children in there, so and the Romani in the Romani carnival, there are a lot of Romani people. So guess what? They're werewolf chow too. Guess what? That's like 47 or so people. I don't know.
Unless you count them leaving at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of them, Larry and Gwen have a long kiss. But as they have this long kiss, the carnival's in disarray because a werewolf is in town. All because Maliva just decides to gossip that he's a werewolf to everybody. And it spreads around via 2 seconds of arm waving. So they're just like, woo, 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 woo. And all the Ramadi people are suddenly notified of this via 2-3 seconds of arm waving.
Is she trying to protect her people and kind of let's just, you're going to kill somebody, so let's get you out of here.
Yeah, they're in disarray, and, Larry's like, why? And then he's like, there's a werewolf in town. And then he goes, oh, shoot.
Oh, they said there's a wolf in the camp. They didn't say werewolf. They said it's a wolf in the camp.
Oh, so they did. But this does eventually give him a Jekyll and Hyde style hallucination thing for like different seconds, which is a cool effect, but it also feels like, you know, a bit unnecessary, just a little bit. I mean, it is necessary, but I mean,
like the kind that Jekyll gets when he drinks the potion. Talking about that?
Yeah, when he transforms. And in this case, yeah, Larry heads home and he finds he has started growing hair. And
you see, Lawrence, when boys become of a certain age.
Okay, we're not. Let's not bring this up more than it needs to be.
It needs to be. Yeah, I'm just.
So yeah, he turns into this terrifying werewolf-human hybrid, claiming the life of a single villager. He is not super threatening this movie. Where's my Nosferatian massacres, man?
Well, you don't see his face quite yet. You see he does these little.
Well, we do see his face in the shadows. Not like it's
yeah.
not like his face is recognizable anyway. But
they try to
funny when you think
they
about
try to
it,
keep it from you for a little bit.
It's just funny how when you think about it, the monsters in this films often just kill only a handful of people. I mean, we had like a track record, I think, in Mummy's Hand. It was only like 5. So you
wow.
know.
Well, that's a massacre. Oh my gosh.
But in this case, it's like it's one person has died.
Well, one person will die, you know, every full moon, and you're like, you know, so that you can wake up in the morning and everybody can show their cards and see who's the werewolf.
Yeah,
right.
They're tarot cards. Anyway, so the next morning he changes back to his human form and he wakes up freaked out. Obviously he's got a star on his chest and muddy tracks
and his
all over
shirt
the floor.
Changed too. Like when he was changing,
yeah.
he was in a white.
At first, he was in pajamas and he had no undershirt. And then later in that same scene, he has an undershirt now on because he hasn't really like changed anything. Now he has an undershirt, and then he goes back to not having an undershirt after this part. So the next morning changes back to his human form. He wakes up and he sees a star on his chest and muddy tracks are all over the floor. By the time he cleans up the tracks all the way to the windowsill, he glimpses a man following the tracks to his house, and he dodges away. Having heard the howls and seen the victim dead, the town is setting traps and organizing hunting parties to hunt him down, so Larry is very scared, very spooked. He heads downstairs, and his father has noticed the tracks too. Larry asks if he believes in werewolves, and he explains, his father explains his anti-dualist philosophy. Nothing is black and white, only grays, basically, is the way that goes. Though the werewolf cannot physically transform, he can mentally transform, is his idea, his ideology.
Right. And that's kind of more like what, you know, Sudmak originally, you know, wanted or had.
Yeah. But the church bell rings, so they're headed off to church. With one of the best scenes in this movie, in my opinion, due to the way it is represented in this movie. Last in line, Larry looks into the church and notices everyone is staring at him. Everyone is staring at him. And due to his own guilt, he feels he's so unholy as to not be able to bring himself to enter a place considered holy. He is an outcast from civilization and from God.
The themes are definitely palpable in here, which I liked. You know, it just shows cursed. Somebody cursed, and we can relate to that. You know, we're not vampires, we're not constructs, we're humans.
You know, there's the Dracula, the very cheesy, you know, holds up a cross. You know, that cheesy little thing, that cheesy little quick thing. Oh, he hates the religion. This scene emphasizes it a lot more, how much of an outcast he is from humanity, in that, you know, he cannot, you know, enter a place considered holy because he feels that he is so unholy. And that is a big emphasis in this scene that we really like. So later, Sir John and Co. Discuss the recent attacks, and they ask Larry to describe the animal. Larry is adamant it is a werewolf. Paul dismisses the idea, but Dr. Lloyd says a man can believe he is a werewolf, which is actually the accepted definition of medical lycanthropy. And to modern culture, it's the accepted definition of being a furry. I digress.
Wow.
So Larry Ernest asks if werewolves can be cured. The doctor says anything can be cured with cooperation. Paul and Frank being bored, they go to set up a hunting party, and Larry heads out after to get some rest. By the way, I said Sir John and Co. I can't believe how I haven't even mentioned the side characters because they're not really, you know, that fleshed out. They are very weak. Because after all, we have Paul, who, as we said, was, the gamekeeper, or the colonial. Then we have, Frank, who's the gamekeeper. We have Sir John, he's Larry's father, by the way. And the doctor, they barely get anything other than grouping up and, the doctor being like, Larry, you're not okay in the head at all. So Sir John disagrees with the doctor's mass hypnotism idea that he has, He's like, you could be hypnotizing yourself and, improve or something. The doctor says Larry has definite psychological maladjustment and must be ejected from the village, but Sir John defends him. Of course, he doesn't need to be ejected, and that is not better than, just leaving him in his home with his dad to figure things out for himself.
Yeah, and he definitely shows favoritism to his son. I will admit that. It's like, who would honestly get his son off of that kind of thing? It must be a rich person thing where your son is supposed to have done some crazy stuff.
Like, exile him from the village. What I don't remember the lynching, what they call it in the werewolf game. Exiling. What would that do? What would that do much to him other than, what if he's a werewolf and he has escaped? He's not a werewolf in London or werewolf in Wales, which would actually be a really good title. He's a werewolf in anywhere.
Right.
In Romania. Oh no.
Wow.
So next scene, with a creative pan over the leaves, the hunting party have set up a trap, specifically a bear trap. I don't know if there's any other better name for that because it's meant to be catching a wolf man. I can't just call it a wolf man trap. It's the little jaw-looking thing that clamps down.
That's a bear trap, yeah.
It's called a bear trap, but then again, in this case, it's not specifically for bears, and it's also probably not specifically for bears in real life. Anyway, the difference is the bear trap catches... No, I skipped a part. And during the night, the wolf man goes prowling once again for the second time with the same recycled shot of panning up from his tiptoed hinds all the way to, in this case, it only gets to like half before changing into a new shot, which I was like, yeah, this is a recycled shot because it's you can recognize it because it goes from down his feet all the way up to his visage.
Yes.
They're really just saving a lot of money on, like, barely showing very much Wolfman activity. They just have him, one villager. I'll consent to one villager. And then the second time is, the climax of the movie as we are in. So, there's not very many scenes that has the Wolfman in it. So you could say they're saving quite a bit of money. I would not be as surprised if the budget is a little lower than it would have been.
Yeah, well, the other part of it, too, is a lot of the Wolfman work is transformation.
The thing is, they recycle the logs as well. Like I looked back at it, and it is literally duplicated the same log throughout this entire, scene.
Yes, I would agree on that, because, honestly...
The same asset.
You have to kind of look really carefully to be able to tell the difference in the moor scene, the kind of forested part.
You can tell because it has this little nubbin like stick coming out of the top of it, making it look like a crocodile. And you can see this same log, the asset being duplicated around, as if someone really did a bad job in Blender and just duplicated 22 times.
Right.
So yeah, the difference with this outage is that the bear trap catches his foot mid pan up, and he rolls around in pain before collapsing behind a log. The party loses the trail, and Maliva arrives in her carriage to save Larry with her elegy, and he turns human again, and he gets the bear trap off his foot. She tells him he's being hunted, and so he limps off. But he has a close call with the hunters, so now they know that, he was on the scene. Next in the Misty Villa, he chucks stones at the antique store to wake Gwen up and let him in. She lets him in, and he says he's up and leaving this town, but she wants to be with him. He refuses her, would you want to go out with a murderer, He then sees the star on her palm and knows that she is the next victim, so he rushes out in horror. So he goes crying to his father the next morning, and, he is I'm a werewolf. His father says that, that mark on your chest could be made by anything. The star mark on your chest could be made by literally anything. Like what, a cookie cutter?
Yeah, exactly. He slept on a cookie cutter wrong.
Yeah, you got drunk. You slapped a man to death, and then you slept on a cookie cutter, and that's it.
Wow. Exactly.
Literally, only a cookie cutter could make that, really. His father also says, you're in a mental quagmire. you're a grown man, don't believe in Maliva, her nonsense, she's just brainwashing you. He ultimately binds him in a chair in the attic and abandons him. I was like, Child Protective Services, anybody? You're just gonna let him, like, bind you to a chair in an attic?
One thing I wanted to mention, too, and some people have pointed this out, that he asks that his father take the cane with him. So in a sense, he knows that this is not going to work, and if he becomes the werewolf...
At first I was like, is he gonna abuse himself?
No, his only defense is his dad killing. Is that if anybody's going to kill me, Dad, it's going to be you. So he's almost like...
his father humors him and takes it, not realizing that, this is him being like, take the cane or else you're gonna die. Kill me before I do any more harm to anybody else. So, he takes it. Next scene, the hunting crew are out still, and this is where we get a comment about...
I could have sworn I hit him dead on.
And I too. Have you forgotten it takes a silver bullet for a werewolf?
But before that, Larry's dad has gone to leave the forest, but encounters Maliva, who is basically like, don't make excuses, you're trying to go see your son's safety, you do care about him, that's why you're leaving. Or rather, that you do need to, and not just abandon him. So the Wolfman's on the scene again, and Gwen has arrived, ignoring Maliva's warning that she shouldn't be there. The Wolfman gives chase after her, corners her, and kills her. Sir John is pounced upon next, but being equipped with the silver cane, he repeatedly strikes him until he lies motionless. In a tragic twist, Maliva arrives and turns Larry back human with her elegy, and Sir John is devastated at seeing the body of his son, whom he murdered. The hunting party and Gwen also are there, and they're saddened too. But the end, it is a very simple plot. We are going back to, Dracula was a fairly simple plot.
Short movie,
Frankenstein was a fairly simple plot. The Mummy was a fairly simple plot. 1 hour movies. We're going back to 1 hour movies, guys.
Yes, and this is not to be the case always, though.
I also believe White Zombie was actually, around, 1 hour as well, so that was also,
They can tell good stories in 1 hour, but I think that as they go, movies start to coalesce around 90-minute. There's 60, 70, 80. We'll start seeing that with movies, and eventually we'll see 90-minute movies eventually.
Yeah, we with the Universal Monster Movie series, we sort of have this era, and there's, the originals, where it's, Frankenstein, Dracula, the Mummy, and that and then we get to, the sequel era, where we're starting to get into more stuff. You could say that Son of Frankenstein segments into a new, a third era, which, of course, this Wolfman would be in, and then we get to, the fourth era, which is, the true downfall. It's just mostly, the comedian stuff, and then,
it's
Gilman
downfall,
appears.
but you get Gilman, and you start getting more space-based creatures and things like that, and Universal had to kind of spread out a little bit and kind of leave some of those supernatural creatures behind and go with more truly science fiction based things and mutations and things.
This movie is not a perfect movie to any stretch, but honestly it is one of the last great Universal monster movies, if not the last. It is probably the last, if not about the last movie that we see in the Universal horror lineup that matches the quality and the stature of Frankenstein and Dracula.
Yeah, it doesn't quite approach the brilliance of the set design and all the things that they put in that and then the philosophy, but it's quite entertaining. It does create an icon, which is the Wolfman
and Lon Chaney Jr.
Yeah, and werewolves eventually will have different designs to them. Sometimes more human looking, sometimes kind of like the Wolfman looking, and some of them are more wolf-headed looking.
Yeah, to compare it to Werewolf of London, I'll say that Werewolf of London is better, to be generically better. Not it could be slightly better, it could be really better. I'd say in the acting, some of the direction, maybe even some of the makeup in some cases probably could be labeled as better, except it wasn't written as well. Scenes drag on with way too much fluff, or to be a bit punny, we could say too much fur. And the ending of Werewolf of London really undid a lot of its satisfaction that it could have had. It has them, being like, I apologize for killing all of these dudes. I'm dying, dead. And he talks, and that's just okay. But yeah, you can see our Werewolf of London episode that we did early this season to get more of our opinion on that.
Kind of contrast and compare, definitely.
But this movie definitely is written a lot better than that. Kurt Sudmak does have some mastery to, the writing of this. The script is pretty decent. Again, it's not perfect.
I think the makeup's better. I'm sorry, I think the makeup's better.
Yes,
that's my
like
opinion.
the rubber nose is a little cheesy, but I feel like one of the things about Kurt Sudmak's writing is that with horror movies, good horror movies that you like to have, is that it draws you into the lore. It draws you into the supernatural from the natural. But this movie, it doesn't draw you into the lore, it smacks you in the head with it.
Yeah, but if you think about it, all the lore going forward that people tend to associate with werewolves, it comes from this movie a lot. And
yeah, it really just it bangs you on the head with the silver cane, going like when the full moon is bright, the autumn night stuff, and the enter the soil and the stuff like that, and it's like
I think it's poetic and I like it. So
it's sort of beating you in the head with it, sort of in the first since the first 5 minutes of this movie when get into the antique shop and she talks about the werewolves. Just it's a free thing to talk about, But I will say this movie definitely did have some rewrites from his original idea of the creation. It probably could have been better in that state, or it would have made a lot more sense in that state, the decisions that Kurt Sudmak made. But I will say he's not a perfect writer.
No, not by any stretch.
This isn't a perfect movie to any stretch, but is honestly one of the last great Universal monster movies.
I agree.
And this is definitely a classic for days to come.
Well, it's a classic to me. It's a classic to me.
It's a classic to you as well. The times that you saw it on TV channel.
Yeah, Turner Classic Movies.
Turner Classic Movies.
They also had like the Halloween, movie, like stretches, a bunch of movies together during Halloween on certain channels. They play a lot of these old movies all in a row, and it's great.
Wasn't there like, what was the dude who was like, the strict fade in the background, and he did that stuff on TV?
Well, there was Svengoolie.
Svengoolie, yes.
Yeah, and then of course one guy was Joe Bob Briggs. He was kind of like a kind of cowboy kind of guy, country guy, not quite cowboy, but like just real salt of the earth kind of guy, and he introduced a lot of people to a lot of old movies.
Those Roger Ebert and whatever his
Roper
was.
Yeah, Richard Roper.
Richard Roper. Yeah, this is bringing back a lot of memories about, we talked about, how this impacted you in these, from seeing this media as you're growing up. And you could say it's definitely classic for that, and will remain visible in the limelight of the Universal monsters. But what won't be visible is the Invisible Agent, which we are going to see next, which I believe came out in 1942, the year that will live in infamy. As we will talk about next episode, we'll talk about the war and how it affected America.
And affected this movie's plot, too.
And affected the movie's plot with how it starts dramatically focusing on something different, And I'll have to see how well it executes that. But yeah, I feel like it's probably going to be in between The Invisible Man Returns and The Invisible Woman for me. But time will tell.
Yep. All right. So, as podcasts come to their predestined end, so must we rest in the earth. I don't know.
All right, let's rest in the earth, bury ourselves like Mr. Beast, and then wake up for a brand new podcast.
All right. Good night, everybody. Good day, and good evening, and good afternoon.
Thanks for listening to Cinematic Fantastic Podcast. Click here and here for some more excellent content. Hope you'll enjoy it. See you soon.